Now, picture yourself in a situation where you're dealing with a blank piece of paper, and now you have to organize, set down, recite, enumerate, and start processing an estate. In other words, the testator or testatrix has given you nothing. Is that what you want? You want to leave no information? That's the point. I've heard in real time somebody saying to me, my late husband didn't do something, or he didn't make something. What can we do about that? I only found this. Is that enough? What could be done? I'm certain that this individual was smart and capable, but he or she didn't get the job done. The anguish that a survivor has when someone has not done the job or hasn't done it well. I'll do it tomorrow. I agree with you. This is not fun stuff. And I would prefer to do something else. Absolutely. I'll do it tomorrow. But doing it tomorrow might not be the right strategy. We don't know how long we got. It might be too late. I must get my affairs in order. A lot of people say it, but what does it mean? Where do I start? What do I do? It's complicated. It's not that complicated. Everybody may have a different vision, might have different steps. I've been thoughtful about it. I've come up with a top 10. Start with the right attitude. If you don't want to do it, then you're going to do it badly. If you want to do it fast, you're going to do it badly. If you don't do it with the right attitude, with gusto, all of you are successful. You've achieved so much. Achieve this. This is really important. Information. I've had a file, had no information. The spouse was there saying, what's in the estate? I'm not sure. Okay. So for me, I had two images, two visions. One vision was Indiana Jones. I'm going to go around the world trying to figure out where the assets are. Or two, we have some information. Now we just have to connect the dots and figure it out. So in a way, it's like the children's game, pin the tail on the donkey. Is that a way to run an estate? I don't think so. We are going to do better than that. I've made a list of various things of what you can do in terms of getting organized. Keep your paperwork, ask for business cards, organize your paperwork, make a list, enumerate an estate inventory. Tell the people what you have, where it is, which bank, which branch, what account number, passwords, what have you. Next. Okay, I think about making a mark in the world. What I'm trying to say there is I want you to be happy in your golden years. So how does one do that? First of all, peace of mind will be earned through getting your affairs in order. But more than that, I want you to engage with your family. Do what you want to do. Get your bucket list made and done. Do stuff. Engage with your community. Do for others. In other words, it's a very holistic kind of perspective. In other words, what I'm saying to you, plan for the last years for you to contribute, doing for others. When you do that, there'll be a level of satisfaction and enjoyment and happiness. Most people, when they talk about property, they talk about their car, their house, their building, and what have you. In current times, intellectual property is an issue. Some might be very important, very significant. But from a very general point of view, let me just make these points. make a list of passwords and make a list of your social media and your various other platforms that you use. And it's important that you investigate. For example, let's say you have a blog and you want this work that you've prepared and you worked on for so long, and you want this to be transferred because it has a certain value. You need to verify with the platform owner and operator, how does one transfer your account to the next level? Meaning, once you've passed, then there's a transfer and there's a process. Most people don't think about that. Become informed about critical matters. There are so many elements that that make a part of one's golden years. And it's important for people to have more information, to understand what some of these areas are and how they may interact or how they may impact upon them. Next. Hospice, palliative care, end-of-life care. People talk about that. But I don't think people really understand. There's a distinction between palliative care and end-of-life care. End-of-life care is at the end of life, the last number of months. And it's at the conclusion of one's lifetime and basically the conclusion of the dying process. Palliative care is before. It's not a dirty word. It's not a bad word. It's not a bad place to be in the sense that you're not there yet. But I'm making this point in order that you embrace it if and when, because palliative care is wonderful. There was a gentleman, Dr. Balfour Mount, who was the founder of palliative care, and he just passed away. So now that I've mentioned his name, I salute you, because that contribution to all of us is tremendous. So as an example, in terms of palliative care and end-of-life care, I need you to become more informed. I need you to be able to, therefore, look at the future with more information. Financial abuse. That's really a plague. It's important that people be vigilant and not be as trusting as general. House and home. What I'm talking about there is things that relate to the home. They've been covered to a certain extent by the previous speakers, but I wish that you understand that that's a major part of your golden years, and it's significant to put time and consideration into it. Next. Funeral expenses, burial plot. Make arrangements. Your family are not mind readers. They don't know. Have the talk. Speak to your kids. Speak to your close relatives. Tell them what you want, why you want it. Let them be aware of it. And if you can, make arrangements in advance. Next. Okay, this is a big one. Business people are very accomplished people. And I question myself why you don't want to accomplish this well. I say, figure out how to transition your company. If you don't, you're looking for headaches, not only for you, but also for the ones that come after you. Next, develop an exit strategy. If you have a business and partners, make a partnership agreement. If you have a company, have a shareholders agreement. Consider a voting trust arrangement. All this to say, thinking ahead can help avoid messy infighting after you're gone. Next, health-related documents. It's important that you express to others and put it down in writing in a formal way in terms of what you want and how you want it. Next, estate documents. It includes a will, but it also includes, in my perspective, an estate inventory and distribution schedule. In other words, what you have, where it is, details, and that will provide help in order for the people coming after to administer and process the file. Next. Read my lips. I'm saying it again. Make a will. If you don't make a will, you're letting the law apply. Why would you do that? When you go in for a hamburger, the company says, have it your way. Why wouldn't you have it your way when you have a will? When you have an estate? Why let the other person tell you what you're going to do with what you got? Make a will. If you don't make a will, this is what's going to happen. A successor, Article 619 of the Civil Code, a successor to whom an intestate succession devolves or who receives a universal legacy or legacy by general title by will is an heir from the opening of the succession provided he accepts it. Next. If the deceased leaves a spouse and descendants, the succession devolves to them. Okay, so there are certain rules, but it doesn't necessarily work. I know of a case, for example, where there was a death, no will. The children, the adult children, were okay. The spouse, the widow, needed it. So what happened is the children signed over their share because there was no will. Why do we have to put people into that situation? Why? All you have to do, make a will. Next. I'm going to talk about a number of areas, not necessarily in any particular order, not necessarily in terms of validating their importance, but I'm trying to give you some information in terms of the kinds of things that could happen and what you need to know about. There's such a thing as a beneficiary who should not inherit. The law has such a person. 623. The following persons are unworthy of inheriting by operation of law: a person convicted of making an attempt to the life of the deceased, a person deprived of parental authority over his child, with the exception for the children, etc. The following persons may be declared unworthy in inheriting: a person who has subjected the deceased to ill treatment or who has otherwise behaved towards him in a seriously reprehensible manner. So what I'm trying to make you sensitive to, and there are issues that become litigious. For example, if you have an adult child who has abused the testator who has passed away, there's a possibility that one of the other family members may oppose this person inheriting because of the abuse and what have you. Be aware of the notion of an unworthy heir. Next. This one just came up in a file of mine. There was a lady, she had married, this was a second marriage for her husband, and he had made a will. And he died intestate. He didn't leave another will. So the will had named his previous spouse and made reference to a child that was of the first spouse. And these people were not in his life, and yet we were faced with this will. And I was told by this client that don't worry about it, because I spoke to the notary and she told me that it was okay because there's an article of the code which cancels it. So I checked it. And this is Article 764. Now, as it happened, the will of which I was speaking was made prior to the change in the law, which meant that the first will remained. So, do you want to leave a file with this kind of entanglement? I say again, make a will. Here's another problem, and I've seen this several times in my career. The elderly person is cohabitating with a person, an adult child, or another individual who's cohabitating. They're roommates, whatever. The point that I'm making is that when the person passes, the estate then is in a situation where they have to address this individual. And I've seen over and over again where the person doesn't want to go. And it's really problematic. It's really difficult. And the courts go slow. And there's a lot of anguish. So, be aware. And again, make a will. This was a quick one. This was an interesting tax case. It's important with your RSPs to name your spouse as beneficiary. Next, interfamily dispute. I cited a case, the Michel Lagasse case. This was a situation in a company. There was a family dispute in terms of who was going to run the business, who was going to be pushed out, etc., etc. The key finding was that ultimately they condemned one side of the family for doing X, Y, Z, and they had to pay lots of expenses. Next, snowbirds. There is a situation of joint ownership with a right of survivorship. Watch this. You have a condo in Florida. Be careful what the fine print says. If it's not tenancy in common, but tenant with right of survivorship, that means when you pass, the other co-owner becomes whole owner. Next, usufruct by will. It's a device that could be used in your will. Next, gifts. There are the possibility of having inter vivos. Famous last word. Some of you might remember Jean Drapeau saying, the Olympics can no more run a deficit than a man can have a baby. Remember that? Famous last word. Salvador Dali said, I do not believe in my death. But then he passed after he said it. General John Sedgwick said, they couldn't hit an elephant at this distance. He was a general in the Civil War in the US. And then he was shot dead. And the last one I offer you, I must get my affairs in order. Maybe you. A dying man can do nothing easy. If you leave it to your dying bed, it's going to be much harder. Remember, make a will. Last point. If a thing is worth doing, it's worth doing well. Yeah. Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. Think about it. You've lived a lifetime to get here. I'm going to leave you with a few rousing slogans. Don't be a half-empty person. Instead, be one who is half full. In other words, be optimistic. Value family, be devoted, be strong. Do it now, do it well.
Make a will.